And we're on air. Welcome and good afternoon or good morning.
Wherever you are in the world.
Good evening.
Hi.
It is time for Who Makes the News, and thank you so much for joining us.
Sean, have we ever introduced ourselves fully, properly?
I'm Sean Rolls.
And I'm Alicia Evans, Research Officer for Fem Pacific.
Media Advocacy Officer. I write things, make things. She reads a lot of things and then sends me numbers.
Yeah.
It's good fun.
It is.
So now we're going to be talking about things that shortly after this will simply become numbers in a monthly report.
Yeah.
So tell us, what are we talking about today?
Well, the report has actually been done already. But we're talking about today kind of agriculture, really. That's the whole focus of the two articles,
Yay.
which piqued my interest for this morning's news. One is on the front page of the Fiji Times, and it's titled Dry Spell. So apparently the Ministry for, I think, Agriculture have kind of given out about 4.2 million litres of water in the West because they're having, this extended dry spell.
Yep.
And they're only quoting the divisional officer for the West, divisional planning officer for the West, and he's kind of basically pointing the finger of blame at livestock farmers for basically using or abusing the emergency water supply, for kind of using it for their cattle and not for drinking and cooking, which is what the water should be used for.
Yes.
In case of emergency. So it was really interesting to kind of read that and think, well, take a step back there for a second.
Yeah.
Because these farmers, this is their livelihood you're talking about. Their cattle also need water, so they're just trying to survive. Because for them, this is an emergency. And kind of their whole definition of what an emergency is. This, their livestock die.
That's what they need.
Yeah. So it's really interesting to kind of see, whose definition of emergency are you using in this sort of article. It was very kind of one-sided and not really reflecting kind of the reality of the diverse needs of local communities in the West, particularly in the agricultural sector.
And it would be really interesting because already, it would be a great idea to make sure that your livestock remains healthy given the recent outbreak of bovine TB.
Yeah.
I think so. Market prices are going to be on the up because of a lack of supply.
But apparently,
beef and stuff.
the Ministry for Agriculture are setting aside $2 million in next year's budget to tackle this.
Tackle it. Attack it. Use violent language. That's great.
Maybe I just made that up.
Maybe. But, they're obviously thinking about addressing these kinds of things, and people will continue to be thinking about these kinds of things next week. At a 3-day?
It's 22nd to the 25th of September. It's, right, 3 days, 4 days?
4 days.
4 days, right, from Tuesday to
Friday.
So this is going to be a Pacific agricultural policy planning workshop to basically look at two things when you're looking at whole government's agricultural budget. One is on the public expenditure review, and the second part is on key regional policy initiatives. This is basically to ensure that the government's goals in terms of agriculture are the right goals and that they are being achieved in the most effective way. But my kind of question when I was reading this update, because it was sent to us by email, not exactly news, but maybe next week it will be, so preview.
Preview.
Yeah, I was just kind of thinking, how gender responsive is this forum going to be? If it's kind of...
Who knows?
Because it was saying that it's modeled on existing forums to do with finance, tax, and kind of statistical issues.
Yeah.
So, how gender responsive, inclusive.
It'll be really interesting to see if they have a dedicated session in terms of gender responsiveness, or in terms of gender at all. You probably are only going to see one session over the 4 days being about gender instead of having gender cross-cutting as we would recommend it. It would also be really interesting because it is a regional approach, and given that it is agriculture.
Yeah.
How are they going to be dealing with El Nino over the next year and making sure that that is reflective of the priorities for the budget for next year, as well as recovery after next year, because particularly in terms of what kind of support will they be giving to the agricultural industry. Are they going to be supporting farmers, or are they going to be recommending that maybe farmers find something else to do for the next year, given that it's gonna not be really great, you know, climate, weather-wise. So yeah, that's going to be really interesting to see what they kind of come out with. You know, how is P&G kind of dealing with everything at the moment, because they've got their drought, but also some frosts, so they're dealing with a whole lot of things. SPC, what can they do in terms of ensuring that there are resilient crop species available?
Yeah. Maybe
through emergency relief for already existing farmers. Is there like a farmer registry?
I have no idea.
That'd be kind of interesting if they think about maybe formalizing and having a, you know, agricultural farmer registry, so that there's data available to understand the scope of the possible impact for, you know, the current and upcoming El Nino conditions, and also if they were thinking about emergency relief or distributing more resilient crops or resilient seedlings. You know, how many would they have to think of? How many farmers are in what area, and what do they kind of look at and prioritize? Because if agriculture is not thought about now, then it's going to affect, for example, markets, particularly for people who buy from farmers and use the proceeds of what they sell as their livelihood as well. Market vendors are already seeing an impact on their livelihoods because of already existing extended dry spell conditions, and so they're having to drive prices up, and so people don't actually want to buy anything, apparently, particularly in smaller towns. So that's also something that we're seeing.
But it's interesting that you're talking about data for kind of farming industries and activities, because the second article, which kind of picked, that was interesting.
About data?
Data in the term of kind of income tax and how it's related to agricultural activities. So it's an interview with the Fiji Revenue and Customs Authority's CEO on agriculture, and if you are like an SME, or if you take part in kind of commercial agriculture, if you are exempt from income tax or paying income tax. So it's including like the different kind of criteria and requirements that's needed in order for you to be eligible to kind of, I guess, apply for exemption or be exempt from paying your income tax. And one of the requirements was kind of, it was saying financial records in English for all of your kind of income expenditure kind of thing. And I was thinking, well, you need financial literacy training for that. And we know that from our networks, women are saying that's what they need, but they're not getting because of the kind of systematic barriers that are in place for women. So that was like, oh, that's interesting. So I think the whole interview was really reflective of how gender blind the kind of financial system is for farmers, because there was no gender lens in the actual interview. In the responses from the CEO of Revenue and Customs, the gender kind of lens wasn't there. And interestingly, I didn't know that there was something called a Farmers Emergency Fund Account for disaster relief. It started this year in January, and basically to be eligible to receive this, you need to make a cash donation of at least $10,000. And I'm like,
you need $10,000 to be able to access an emergency fund.
Yeah, and get a 200% tax deduction. So by our silence, you kind of think
it's how
realistic.
I mean, it's also really interesting because, I mean, generally in terms of a lot of benefits or things that should be afforded to people, thanks to our magnificent constitution, the burden of cost still lays with the individual. For example, I mean, we've talked about this on the show time and time again. If you want electricity in your community, if you want water in your community has to pay for it. More recently, earlier this week, we saw water getting connected to an island community in the north.
It was in the north.
And they had to pay for 9/10 of the $96,000 cost for the installation of connecting their community via pipes and taps to a underground water source. I think a tenth of that was paid through the Prime Minister's assistance. So he paid $9,600. But the community had to look after and feed the water authority people that came down to fix everything and set everything up. And then they were told, don't use the water outside of daytime.
Yeah, that
like
was
6 a.m. No, I think it's 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. are recommended water use times. Because you don't need water at any other point in the day, right? Right. Forget about women that want to feel clean after looking after their house all day. Because their free hours are probably going to be between 10 p.m. to 5 a.m., particularly in a rural setting. But no water for you, I'm sorry. You're outside of water hours.
You just have to wait for a day that you don't do anything.
Yeah. Or maybe you could just set some water aside and then try and remember to make time for yourself. So that's great.
Yeah, so that's kind of...
But we also had a fake front page today.
We did. Yeah, it was an insert featuring the Sugar Festival. Fiji has a lot of festivals.
We have a lot of festivals.
Pageants.
We now, I think, have a pageant for every single municipality. Every municipality has a pageant.
Yeah, and it'll all be towards the kind of country pageant, the Fiji pageant.
Miss Fiji. Because previously, through the Hibiscus Festival, which was the largest, the mother of all festivals, there would be the Miss Hibiscus. Miss Hibiscus would become Miss Fiji to compete in the Miss South Pacific, and
which is now Miss Pacific Islands.
I have no idea. Pageantry.
But it was 7 young females have put their names forward. So it was because of the last Miss Hibiscus Festival, they were talking about how can we move away from kind of looking at pageants as just a beauty contest and kind of using it as a platform for engaging with young people and representing young people's kind of perspectives on societal issues. So
I mean, they've done pretty well in more recent years. They've never really been a outright beauty or appearance. There's most photogenic for some of the larger festivals. You have the other titles, and most photogenic is one of them. But primarily, you're supposed to really choose a well-spoken young woman. Sometimes that's a little bit of a difficult choice for judges. But primarily because you don't have young women who are raised to be outspoken or to be well-read, because women don't read the books, you just do the things, even in a more urban setting. And so it's really interesting to see women, particularly young women, stand up and try and raise concerns and community issues and be more visible from rural settings. And so that's also really interesting because it is very much a huge barrier in terms of actually trying to create visibility around issues. And so it really depends on the community support for them to be supported as well as taken seriously. And so there's actual change from whatever they're raising. But we also have the Understanding Cow, which is my favorite because they always have some very interesting narratives that you can view on our YouTube channel. So that's always available. But Fiji took back the crown from Tonga this year, and actually not just Fiji, but a young trans woman from the West.
Indeed.
So that was also really good. It's Agu, right?
Agu, right?
Agu.
And she was also quoted in an article to do with mental health and stigma.
So she's a very visible but also well-spoken individual, and a huge and there's huge potential there to be a great champion for trans visibility, for diversity conversations at all levels, but also general good things and good vibes, because dealing with, for example, mental health concerns, which is unfortunately a huge issue, particularly within the LGBTIQ community, because of a lot of the social stigmas and bad things that people say for no good reason.
It would be interesting to see if that's covered in Friday's school kind of national.
Oh yeah, no
school on Friday.
Well, no classes. You gotta go to school anyway if you're in Fiji, and they're gonna tell you about no suicide or suicide. I don't know. It was a very strangely phrased.
Not only strangely phrased, but also sort of just like just popped up out of nowhere.
Yeah,
like,
we're gonna cancel all classes to talk about suicide. And to be honest, you're going to be bombarding all these children with I mean, if it's school wide, how do you make sure that the information you're giving to children is relevant to their age group and to their level of understanding?
Yeah.
It's the same thing with sexual health and sexual reproductive health. You can't just tell kids, use condoms. If they're 5 years old, they don't know.
They don't know what a condom is.
Well, I mean, they do, but how is that going to be relevant to them? They haven't hit puberty. They don't want to sex thing yet. They probably want to like they probably want to like maybe hold a girl's hand and tell her she's pretty. Doesn't matter if you're a little girl or a little boy. Yeah. You know, you want to hold somebody's hand and say, I think you're cute. I like you.
Will you marry me?
Yeah, will you marry me when we're older? Yeah. It basically means that you get to eat the other person's food, right? Because that's what, you know, your parents do all the time. But you know, you need to make sure that the information is relevant to their age group and their level of understanding. And you also, like, I'm really concerned because our teachers, for one, going to be able to explain things to students in a way that it's, you know, it's practical and it's meaningful, but also are parents aware of this, and are parents also getting assistance in terms of if their kid comes home with questions, are they going to be able to answer that? Like, did they send a letter to all the parents saying, we're going to tell your kid about suicide, so be prepared, all right? I know you had no choice in the matter.
Yeah.
But we're going to be telling them about that, so that's cool. And so, I mean, the quality of information, the accessibility of information, all that kind of stuff. I mean, I really hope they thought this through because it is a huge thing. And if you don't deal with it in the right way, the concern for why don't you talk about suicide in the media is apparently sometimes you don't want to give people ideas. So again, how do you make sure that talking about this isn't making those who feel most vulnerable comfortable so they're actually able to get the help that they need?
Yeah, because I mean, if you're just talking about the word suicide is not.
If that's been on their head like for like a month or something, yeah. I mean, teenage angst is a crazy thing, and so if all of a sudden you're bombarded with all of this information, you're gonna feel really out of it.
Yeah.
By the time,
like, I can't do anything if I feel a certain way.
What are they gonna do all weekend? Oh no! It should have been on Monday. Should be next Monday. So if they have any questions, they don't have to wait all weekend, and they don't have to deal with their parents having no idea what to tell them. I mean, but who knows what to tell your children whenever they actually ask you a question? So
there's no guide on it.
It's not necessarily, you know, just you know, for suicide. If they ask you where babies come from, why can't I have that $2,000 thing I've been asking for since my birthday? But you know, what does the pig cry, you know, before it becomes my bacon? Kids ask weird questions, and you're never going to be prepared for it. So it's going to be a fun weekend for everybody
when they ask stuff like that.
Please try answer their questions, and if you don't know, find out together. There's a magical internet machine. There are libraries. There are also medical professionals. So if your kid has any questions, I'm sure you could call 1325. Is that the number? And then your
helpline.
Yeah, and so then you'd be able to probably ask a question that way about if a kid's feeling like this, what do they do? Because what if they know that their friends have these kinds of issues, so they ask their parents to help their friends. It's just, there's so much that could go down this weekend.
Assuming that the family has access to a mobile phone and a landline.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Right. Because it's supposed to be all over the country. No classes, just suicide.
Wait, what?
Well, okay, you know, goodness knows how we're actually going to be talking about it on Monday.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good fun.
All right. So I think that is going to be all for Who Makes the News for today.
Yes.
Thank you for listening, watching, and however you're accessing this.
Joining us.
Yeah. And if you do have any questions, then the number that you can call is not 1325, but 3318160.
And if you don't want to listen to us talking to you or responding to your questions, you could always leave a comment on any of our social media. Our YouTube, for example, counts. But there's also a Facebook page, facebook.com/FemLinkPacific. And those are ways that you can get in touch with us.
Yeah. Did you say info, Matthew?
You can also email directly if you like the professionalism of sending an email. info@femlinkpacific.org.fj. That's FEMLINK Pacific.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So thank you. I have been Sharon Rolls, and you are?
Alicia Evans.